So we heard you tell us about giving your talk, and then what occurred?
Right. So initially, giving the talk was a positive experience, and the response after the talk was an amazingly positive experience. And we will link to that talk so that it's available. In that moment of having people, I mean, there was literally a line of people after sacrament meeting to come and just
love you,
say that was beautiful. I mean, just like in a nutshell, that was the response, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is such a contrast of like how I've felt, within this community, or how I've imagined being received in this community, in disclosing this about myself. And like, this is beautiful. This is like surreal. This is like, it was overwhelmingly powerful to feel that seen and that loved and that heard and that valued, not just as an individual, but just around something so vulnerable as my sexual orientation, and that people could connect to that and yeah, just value it, not just tolerate it, but actually value it. And so yeah, initially it was like, wow, this is really amazing. And I did mention Kristen actually in the talk. I should say that, as somebody who'd really supported me and listened and let me story, what had happened up to that point, and then, in my life, kind of throughout, growing up and the choices that I made and all of that, and being there to listen through that story and then support me on through, kind of coming out. Then after that, there were some really challenging, painful responses as time went on, and I think they're important to say, because they're themes that I imagine potentially as people would potentially come out, and so I feel like it's important to identify them so we as a community can figure out maybe ways to navigate them, so that people don't have the painful negative experience I had, especially coming off of something so beautiful. It was really disruptive. I was like, after months and months of feeling unsafe and wrestling with some of the negative stuff, and still kind of continuing to follow these impressions, and then sharing this talk, and it's beautiful and it's wonderful and feeling so much love, and then boom, like right when you get to start feeling good, it's like, no. So I don't want people to like, have that same experience. So anyways, some of those things were people wanting to now step in and control how and where I ever disclosed in the future. Now at the time I didn't have any, every time I never had a plan to continue to like disclose anything about this part of my life. That's just never the way it was. I'm plotting somewhere off in the corner, how I'm gonna talk about, something gay, that just wasn't, it just was not the way it happened. But so there were people that were wanting to control, that, me not disclosing or where I disclosed, which for me, I think it's hard to portray to people like what it's like to like spend your whole life like being afraid to talk about this part of yourself, myself, and then to finally do it, and then someone say, we don't want to hear it. It's like, oh, that hurts so bad.
And then part of the hurt is because it's quite personal. Like, this is, the feelings that you're feeling are directed to you, because the topic you're addressing is talked about. Like you've heard the topic of homosexuality or same-gender attraction talked about, but you weren't getting permission to talk about it with your experience. And I think that like is, if I'm assuming correctly,
right?
Like
no, well, this goes
the pain there is like, you know, now we have someone that can share an example and can help us to feel real in this and how we can reach out, and yet that's not an appropriate conversation is what you're hearing.
Right. And I mean, and we've talked about this idea that, you know, sometimes we think we're not very good at talking about this in our church. Like, actually, we talk about this topic a lot. We talk about our doctrine around this topic. We talk about, you know, the law of chastity around this topic, and
human sexuality,
and marriage, and all of those things. But so everybody's kind of talking about it, except oftentimes the individuals who are
experiencing it,
who are experiencing it, and whose lives are most affected. You know, yeah. I mean, so you know, to feel left out of that dialogue feels really disempowering. And it feels almost like there's a rumor going on, and you have, you know, about you, that you don't have any power to even have a voice in how it's being framed. And so again, you know, getting the courage, finally doing that, is so scary, so hard to convey, you know, how much emotional, spiritual energy was involved in just getting the courage to do that, and then sitting with the vulnerability and the fear in the aftermath. I mean, just an incredible amount of energy, and then to have people respond in that way, it just hurt, and there's no way around that, you know. And so that was one response that was, you know, experience was really negative for me. And the other response that was experienced as really negative is that, you know, people started to express concerns around, not just concerns, but this theme of like, what does this mean to children? And we're afraid of what saying this in front of children, you know, will do. And so there was a lot of fear, a lot of fear. And so for me, you know, hearing about these things, hearing those responses, I was afraid all of a sudden. I'm like, what are they thinking this, like, what are they thinking I'm going to do, or what are they thinking this is going to mean, or what are they inferring about who I am, or, you know, I have children, I'm a therapist, like I'm a good person, I'm the same person I always was, and now I've shared something really personal, and this is a huge sacrifice that I've made to live my faith, but instead I'm being seen as dangerous. And it was like, instead of being seen as a good person in the community, I felt like I was seen as a dangerous person in the community. And that was absolutely like unrattling for me, like the most unnerving thing for me, in being just at church, knowing that was a huge, you know, fear or question mark people were having about me now.
Yeah, absolutely.